Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my February wrap-up part 2. In the month of February I read 24 books, so I'm here to tell you about some of them, and I'll have a link down below to part 1. I'll also have content warnings in the description box down below. All of the books that I'm going to talk about in this part of the wrap-up were copies that were sent for review, so thank you very much to the publishers, and just be aware of that when you hear my thoughts and feelings, but all of them are entirely my honest thoughts. And without further ado, let's get right down to the books. I read Olympus Volume 3 by Rachel Smythe, and this is a Hades and Persephone retelling graphic novel. It's kind of a dark romance theme, and the artwork inside is absolutely gorgeous. It's entirely done in watercolors with a like blue and purple color palette, which you can kind of see on the cover here. And this is the third one, so we're kind of in the middle of the series, like actually smack bam in the middle of the series, I think. And in this one we've got Hades, who is like running the underworld, and he's struggling with his love life, and there's Persephone, who is kind of new to the godly world and having those responsibilities. She's lived a very sheltered life, and she kind of has a crush on Hades. And as well as that, it seems to be doing a bit of a combination and mashup of it being contemporary in terms of the retelling elements, and also there's an age gap between them as part of the romance, so do know that going in. I thought this volume was really good and I really enjoyed it. It is my least favourite of them all so far, but that is not saying much. I just think that not too much happened romantic wise in the middle of this one. What I really liked about this one in particular was Persephone's journey. I think there are some really beautiful moments where Persephone is with some good friends of hers, like Eros, and they have some really deep talks, and those deep talks and what they're talking about I think was just incredibly valuable to read about and to see, and it's one of the more serious moments that's in the whole graphic novel collection, and I kind of appreciated how they handled that storyline and thread. I do think it's really nice to see her with her friendships, but also in this one Persephone just gains a bit more of a backbone and a spine and some independence, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the roots of what she started in this one continue to trickle through until the next one. I do think in this book there's not that many moments where Hades and Persephone are together, and it's quite cute. All the moments where they are, it's really nice, but in this one they're both going on quite individual journeys, and I do think Hades' journey is just not as interesting as Persephone's, and I care a bit less. That's been ongoing throughout the whole series for me, but it struck me even more because before I was mostly seeing him with Persephone, so I didn't mind too much, but just seeing him dealing with his romantic drama that's separate and distinguished from her character, I was just a bit less interested. It fell a bit more into the like girl on girl hate stereotypes and things like that. So this was a really good one, and I'm definitely going to be continuing the series, but I do think it's going to improve again from here, and this was a little bit of a dip for me. I read my first T. Kingfisher book, and that was What Moves the Dead by, well, T. Kingfisher, and this one is a horror book, gothic horror. It's got the same kind of vibes as Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, where we have a soldier, and this soldier is going to this house which is really run down and seems a bit strange because a childhood friend that knew, because this character uses can pronouns, so a childhood friend that knew is kind of dying, and so kind of going back to see what they can do there to help. But also there's a lot that people have said about this house and kind of the animals around this house and how strange it is and how mysterious and how dangerous it might be, and everybody wants to stay away from this house. So when Can goes there, the soldier goes there, Can discovers that maybe there is something going on. This was fascinating. It did a very good job of combining horror and sci-fi elements in some ways to kind of bring that into the story. Do we have a sentient house? Kind of. I liked that element to it too. It was just so atmospheric. It managed to gather together that gothic horror atmosphere that you really like with this dilapidated, run-down house. All of that, all those vibes are in there. I also liked this main character. I liked the use of the can pronouns, and I liked the way that the author kind of built the reasons why the soldier uses those pronouns and a bit more backstory to all of that, which is kind of brought into this. Because our main character is a soldier, there are some threads of PTSD discussed in this, and trauma and grief, but it was also just a creepy story. It's not that long, and it's a retelling of The House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, I should also mention, and it just did what it needed to do very, very well, and it's another good one if you like something creepy, if you like something gothic, and I'll read more T. Kingfisher for sure. I read The House of Fortune by Jessie Burton, and this is the sequel to The Miniaturist, which I read last year and really enjoyed. It's a historical fiction book that's set in Amsterdam, and the first one at least, so I won't tell you what this second one is about because that will give you spoilers, but the first one is about this woman who goes to Amsterdam to marry this person that she's been committed to, and she hasn't met him before, and when she gets there not everything is as it seems and the house is full of secrets, and she gets gifted this miniature version of the house, and then suddenly these miniature dolls appear as significant things are happening in her life. So that's what the first one is about, and this one follows some of the same characters and it's set in the same place, and it's got similar themes of like marriage, duty, responsibility, financial troubles, all of that, and the miniatures again are woven into this story. However, it's one of those books where I just feel like a sequel wasn't particularly necessary. It felt a bit odd because the characters moved up, so rather than the returning characters kind of staying in the voice that we knew them as with the same personalities, where other characters had disappeared over the course of the novel, they slotted into the previous places and new characters stepped into their previous roles, and it just felt like some characters, they wouldn't be the way that they are now that we've met them again. I also wasn't particularly thrilled by the representation in this. One of our main characters here is mixed race, and I don't think it was the best done representation. I was already a bit on the edge with the black representation that we got in the first book, and then this time I was just like, I don't particularly love it. It's by no means a white author writing in the mindset of a person of colour, but it just didn't capture some of the truth that I think another author could have captured if writing this, if that makes any sense. So it just wasn't quite the sequel for me. At the end there, I was satisfied. I did see where the story was going and where it would lead, and I think the mystery element that they tried to add in at the end, it was easy to figure out, but it did have some nice morals and messages tied up into the story, so it's got that going for it. It was very readable. This sequel was written 10 years after the first one, I believe, or something like that, and it feels like no time has passed. The author has managed to be so consistent with the writing style and voice and narrative in this, so it almost felt like a sequel that was published a year later, and I think that's impressive writing. And yeah, there were things that I liked about it, but there were sometimes some ways where I was like, it didn't actually need this sequel. I also read Haven by Emma Donoghue. This is Emma Donoghue's latest book, and it's about these three monks who set off to find an isolated island where they can kind of start their own society anew with their own values and morals and religion imposed on their lives. But maybe it doesn't quite go as planned, and I was really, really disappointed in this one. I thought it was very, very boring, unfortunately, and it's not even that long. It's about 250 pages, but I just couldn't see the point by the end of me reading it. I felt like the plot just kind of unwound in the way that you would expect it to, and it tried to have a bit of a like unseen twist at the end there, but ultimately I just felt a bit like this twist doesn't add anything to the story, and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable, and we could have got to the point that you want the characters to be at the end of the novel without throwing in this particular twist. So it didn't really add up to anything for me. Ultimately, I feel like this book wanted to be Lord of the Flies, but then add in some religious elements, have a bit of the Water Cure by Sophie Mackintosh elements, and it just didn't manage to do or pull off any of them. It was dry. I was bored. I don't have much more to say on it. But that's okay, because then I read Before You Suffocate Your Own Full Self by Danielle Evans, and this is a short story collection that I absolutely loved, and I rated 5 stars. It's a brand new favourite. I read The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans last year, and this is such a good short story collection of hers to move on to next. In this one, it's got short stories that are set in contemporary, sometimes historical, but sometimes present day, and we're following mostly women, black women, who are living their lives, and it's kind of like you get a slice of their life and the situations that they're in and why they're in the situations that they're in. The stories often have open endings where not everything is neatly tied up, but just enough is tied up that it hints to where things go beyond the page, with enough commentary that leaves you thinking about the story once you're finished. I say that often with very good short story collections. They should leave you thinking about a story once you turn the last page, and this does that in a nutshell. It also, unlike The Office of Historical Corrections, where I feel like the stories were more concept driven and more concept led, which is a good thing. But for this collection, she really delved deeper. She delved deeper into some of the commentary that she's talking about women and racism and love and family relationships and romantic relationships and friendships. She delved deeper into those, and I think her character work here is just superbly done. You just get such a good picture of the characters' entire lives, even though you're seeing them for just a slice of their life. And it's just so interesting to see the choices that they make and the repercussions that has on the people around them, but also the larger meaning and implications of those repercussions. It's so hard to talk about short story collections, but this one was just so very good, and I just loved some of this subtle imagery that she weaves into her stories that is so effective. I was so impressed. The titles to the short stories were really good, and the title to this short story collection, Before You Suffocate Your Own Full Self, Chef's Kiss, a beautiful title, but thinking about the stories in references to their titles really aided me while reading this one. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it, and I really recommend. I read The Last White Man by Mohsin Hamid. This is a short book which talks about a world where all of the people who used to be white start turning black, and it's about what happens and how people react when that is happening. And I was so ready to read this one and to delve deep into some of the commentary on racism and internalized racism and what this could mean for the world at large, but it doesn't really delve into any of it. It's entirely a surface level written book, which is such a disappointment because this concept is so cool, this concept is so unique, and there's so much opportunity to say so many important things, and this book just doesn't do it. It just focuses on these characters and their romantic relationship, and yes, the world and themselves are changing around them, but they're more so focused on their own individual journey. I was also really annoyed by the way that this was written, so this is definitely a personal taste thing with the writing style, but they were long run-on sentences that were broken up by commas, so it was just like an ongoing sentence, and it just felt like such a wishy-washy way of writing, and it didn't add anything to the story. I'm all for being creative with points of view, with punctuation, with ways of writing and format, if it adds to the story, and I don't think it was adding to the story because there was not enough story here to add to. Overall, I was just really disappointed when things happened because of the fact that people were turning black or turning brown or like becoming a person of colour. Nothing was explained. None of their actions or the way that society crumbled around them made any sense to me, and so I do think this one was probably the most disappointing thing I read this month, just because it had so much potential and it let me down. I read Haruko Love Poems by June Jordan, which I already recommended in my Books by Black Authors video because I really enjoyed it. It's a poetry collection. Well, June Jordan is a black lesbian poet, I believe, so this is split into two parts. The first part has to do with love poems that she writes to a certain person called Haruko, and I struggled with that section because it just seems so personal, and it seems like there's more to the story that goes beyond the poems, and so while the writing was lyrical and beautiful, I just didn't connect to it as much personally because it felt like it wasn't for me to be reading. But the second part to this collection, where it was just love poems in general, was amazing, stunning, unstoppable, brilliant poetry. June Jordan has such a way of writing stylistically that really suited me and I just thought was genius. She writes rhythmically and then she'll throw in some disjointed rhythms here and there, which flow well for the poem overall, but also trips you up in certain places, which means you need to stop, come back to that line, come back to that phrase and really think on it and dwell on it and see how it fits into the larger picture of the poem, which has contributed to the poem overall. She uses amazing imagery, and you can particularly see that in the last poem of the entire collection, which is the longest poem, and it dwells on imagery and history to show rage, to show passion, to show love, and it's really pulling on those threads of emotion. It was such a good collection. I really want to read more June Jordan poetry, and thank you to Kevvie from Stay Kevvie for recommending this poet. I was in the mood to read middle grade, so do you know what I did? I did exactly that. I read The Chime Seekers by Ross Montgomery. This is a middle grade fantasy book. So what happens is we've got this young boy and he moves to a new house with his parents that he doesn't really like in the middle of nowhere, and he's got a new baby sibling who he's struggling to get along with, and one day he kind of wishes her away and a changeling replaces his sister. But of course, once he realizes what he's done, he wants to get his sister back. So he has to team up with his babysitter slash friend to delve into the world of fairies and magic to go back and swap his sister out for the changeling. And this was just such a fun book. I loved it. I loved the fact that they had all these trials and tasks that they needed to do that seemed impossible, and they had to find ways to make them possible. I loved that we had this fairy who was the villain with all of this power, and the way that he wielded it and the way that the world was set up was just so believable, but also really creative and nicely done. I really liked seeing Yanni, our main character, and also his friend kind of have to work together, and they are quite reluctant friends in the beginning. He doesn't really like her, and he needs to kind of open himself up to friendship and also evaluate himself a bit, because he's quite ungrateful as a character in the beginning. So you get to see him develop and acknowledge the blessings that he has in life and the people who care for him and love him, and open himself up to that love, but also learn how to show that love and that appreciation to other people too. I think it was just such a good job of having something that was mystical and high stakes and fun and creative and goes in avenues that you don't necessarily expect all the time, because I think when it's a you need to do these trials to save someone kind of story, you think you can predict the whole book. I like that it brought something fun and fresh and new, but I also like the fact that, yeah, we do get characters that develop, we do get good morals and understandings, and it's approaching the fact that when you move, when you've got new siblings as a child, that can be quite a tumultuous period, and it addresses that in a very approachable way. Really, really fun, really good one. I also read The World at Week's End by Emma Carroll. This is a historical fiction middle grade, and I was so nervous going in because that's not a genre I usually read. I struggle with picking up adult historical fiction, so the fact that I'm trying to do it in other age audiences is mind-blowing to me, but I had a very good time with this one in the end. So in this it's called The Week at World's End. I always get it wrong. So in this one, we are in historical England, and it's right before the threat of nuclear war happens between America and Russia, and we're following this young girl who lives with her family, and she discovers that there's a girl hiding in the shed in the garden, and the girl says that people are after her, people want to poison her. Can she hide and stay in this place? It was really good. I think there were some threads to the storylines that I appreciated more than others, so I'm going to talk you through it. So we do have this whole storyline about the girl who's hiding in the shed. Why is she there? Who is she? Are people really after her? And I have to admit, that whole storyline surrounding that, which is one of the key threads, is the one that I was least interested in, but it was also one that I can see would be very enjoyable for younger readers. So for child readers, they might be more invested in that storyline, so I didn't want to write off the book because of that. That's me reading this as an adult. I do think younger me would have been more interested in that storyline, so I've just gone in with that awareness. But everything else I really appreciated. This book had a lot of talk about the threat of nuclear war and what war could mean, the dangers of war, how war affects you socially and on minuscule everyday levels as well as internationally, and the fact that it was managing to talk about war, talk about the threat of war without showing a war actually happening and showing that devastation. So it's more approachable for adults to have these discussions with children, I think was done expertly, and it was such a clever way to manage such a hefty and tough topic. It also has a lot about what nuclear war means, so children can kind of process that without having to be too scared about it at the same time. Really, really well done, smart writing. I also really liked the way that the friendships in this are developed. She's a main character who's very quiet, she's timid, she doesn't use her voice, she goes along with everything that everybody puts towards her, and luckily she's got very nice people around her. But it was nice to see her speak up for what she believes is right, learn about protest and how that can happen and what you can do, but also how to strengthen her friendships. And it's not just her who has a storyline. She's got this mysterious girl who also has their own development, and her best friend who also has his own development, even though they are secondary characters. I appreciated the way that character was handled in this, and how they all learned to speak up and use their voices and be brave and assert their own independence, while also understanding that they've got parents and teachers that they need to listen to as well. I thought it was just really cleverly done, one that adults reading with children can appreciate, but also children will be able to appreciate like the mystery storyline of what is this girl doing here. So all in all, this balanced out very well. And then last but not least, the other book that I read for review is This Is How You Fall in Love by Anika Hussain, and this is a young adult contemporary book which has Jessie rep, which is like fake dating, and also has elements of friends to lovers, but also a mixture of things. It's got a love rectangle, I should say, it's, or should I say square? Rectangles, squares, but it's all kind of complex and complicated. I have made a 5 reasons to read video for this, but I'll just recap it briefly here. So we're following our main character. She has always been told by everyone that her and her best friend should definitely get together, but she doesn't necessarily actually want to do this. Her friend, however, gets a girlfriend who he has to keep secret, so he decides to cover up that relationship by entering into a fake relationship with his best friend, and it gets very, very complicated from there onward. I thought it was so much fun. I was here for all the drama. In young adult contemporary, I'm always here for the romantic drama, and I'm impressed by how dramatic this one managed to be. It managed to be so complex but also so believable in the way that these characters are trying to do right by their parents, to do right by their friends, but also to do right by themselves and figure out how they're feeling. I liked that we got to see that Jessie rep. I think it was entertaining. There's like some jokes that are said, but there's also just a lot about the unconventional ways. There's sometimes some stereotypes of what it means to be Jessie, and this kind of breaks some of them and discusses those stereotypes on page as well. I liked the relationship between the mother and our main character. I think seeing their close relationship was really nice, but also how honest it was, and how the mother sometimes admitted when she was wrong, as well as the daughter admitting when she could have done things better and been more sensitive to her mother's feelings. And I think the way those conversations went and how it aligned with the storyline worked very well. It's the kind of story where you don't only get to see romantic love forming, but you see tighter family love happening, you see friendship love happening and falling out and making up. All of that is kind of wrapped into this. So I appreciated how This Is How You Fall in Love was not just about this is how you fall in love with a partner, but also about with a family, with a friend, and that was really nice to see too. But if you want any more reasons why you should read this, I will recommend you click the link down below and go to that 5 reasons to read video. And there you have it. Those are all the rest of the books that I read in the month of February. Let me know down below what was your favourite read of last month. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!